Hello, my name is Michael Bowler, and I'm very happy and excited to be here for this YALC at home event. And I thank Tanya Lee for her previous presentation and her introduction. And I will get right into it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my background and why I write the kinds of things that I write, which is books for and about teenagers. So I grew up in Northern California. I have been hard of hearing my whole life, which was kind of an isolating thing among with my peers because I was the only child that had a hearing issue, and it was difficult often to engage in social situations because I didn't hear correctly, and I would be embarrassed by making the wrong statement. So that kind of led me into more reading and then even writing, making up my own stories, even at an early age. So I went to college in Northern California and I majored in theater and English. And then I came to Los Angeles, where I've been living for forever. And anyway, I got a master's in film production. And with some friends of mine, we made some pretty forgettable low budget movies, horror films, of course, because back in the day, even now, I think for really, really ultra low budget movies, horror was about the only thing that might sell. And the funny thing is, most of these movies I would have dismissed, but it was my youth. But there's been a sort of a renaissance. Getting contacted from people who are like connoisseurs of these 80s and 90s cheap horror movies, and they want to know, do I have copies? Do I have any VHS tapes of them? And I don't really. I have like one. I mean, I made these movies. I don't even have any copies, but anyway, I did that, and then I got into teaching. I got a teaching credential, and I was teaching high school in a kind of a low income area. There were a lot of gangs, there were a lot of racial tensions, primarily kids of color. I think over my entire teaching career, I taught a handful of Caucasian kids. It was that kind of neighborhood. And I'm also passionate about volunteering. I have been volunteering with the Catholic Big Brothers Big Sisters program here since 1983, mentoring boys who don't have fathers in the home. So I'm my eighth little brother right now. He's turned 15. And I've also been a passionate volunteer with incarcerated youth here through the juvenile justice system in LA. I've been doing that since 1984, and it's been eye-opening. I mean, I have learned between the teaching and the kids that are incarcerated, I have learned so much, which is what I try to share what I've learned in my stories about how our society has marginalized children so much. I mean, if they don't toe the line, if they don't like fit the conveyor belt mentality of that school, you're here on the conveyor belt, and then you have to be here at this moment, and then here at this moment, and then here. And if you're not, they want to kick you out. They want to get rid of you because you're a troublemaker. You're supposed to be on that line. That conveyor. You're all supposed to go to college, and the kids are like, "What about me? I don't want to go to college. I want to do." We don't care. That's how we don't care. So those kids end up going to the streets. They join gangs. They get into trouble. They get into drugs. I've worked with a lot of gay kids that have been kicked out of their homes. These are my type of characters that I write about, and because I want kids like them to see themselves, because represented in a positive way, not in a negative way like Hollywood always has. These kids are all bad usually. They're terrible and this and that. So I wanted something positive. And the other thing I'm passionate about is foster care and adoption. And I just thankfully finally adopted a boy who will be 12 in September. I adopted him in January. He'd been with me for like 3 years. And having now have a lot of experience with the children's court system, I realize that it's like every other system in America. It's all about the wants of adults, not the needs of children. We do not put the needs of children first. Teachers' unions, I'm sorry if you're a teacher, I've been a teacher, they don't put the needs of children first. The teachers might, but not the union organization, and not bureaucracy. They don't do that. So again, that's what I write about, and that's some of what I'm passionate about. I've spent my life working with young people, with children and teenagers, and that's why when I really got seriously into writing, I wanted to share these kids that I know with readers who don't know them. because I want people to understand that these kids, I don't care who they are, if they're a gang member on the street, if they are hooked on drugs, or if they're a straight A student in school, they all want the same thing. They want to be loved. They need to be nurtured and loved. They want adults around them. I know that the idea that teenagers do not want adults, they don't want parents, they do. And that is a lie. So usually in my books, I try to portray positive adult role models. The kids, either they have to find them or the person is there and the kid discovers them. So my current book that I am promoting here is called I Know When You're Going to Die. And it became a finalist in the Wishing Shelf Book Awards. It has just won a couple of other awards. And it's a fun book, I think, a fun, not a whodunit, but it's a who will do it kind of a mystery, because it has a little paranormal twist to it. All of my books tend to have a kind of a little fantasy or paranormal aspect, because I like that. That's what I liked reading when I was a kid. So in this book, we have a boy who is a 16-year-old, very rich. I've worked with, believe it or not, some very wealthy kids in juvenile hall, even children of celebrities who were ignored by their parents because their parents were too busy doing whatever they were doing, and the kids got into trouble, got into drugs, and so on. So the characters in this sort of reflect those kinds of kids. They really don't have any strong parental role models, so they're kind of on their own. And the main character is very shy, super shy. I was very shy as a kid, so I can relate to that, and I put it in here. He's very shy, and but he likes helping homeless people. He likes giving back to the community because he's so wealthy. I mean, he can have anything he wants, but most of his peers just party. So he has one really good friend. He gets bullied at school for being shy, and his friend JC, who is Latino and one of the very few Latino kids in the school, he gets bullied for being Latino. So this boy Leo, as you will hear in this little excerpt, is given a kind of power he doesn't want. So I'm going to read a little bit from the very beginning here, the opening chapters. So this is how the story starts. So you'll get a sense of where it goes from here. I'm ladling out stew to ragged old men, boys in hoodies, and women clothed in layers of dirty, mismatched apparel. They've come to stay the night at one of Skid Row's rescue missions because it's better than a tent or cardboard box on San Pedro Street. I like being here more than I like being at home, so I help out every weekend. I'm chatting with a skinny boy and his mom, passing through the line on their way to scarf a hot meal at one of the foldable tables, when one of the mission staff taps me on the shoulder. Leo, there's a guy in the sleeping quarters asking for you. Said his name is Franklin? Thanks, I reply. I don't recognize that name, but I make my excuses to the boy and his mom and hand over my ladling duties to the girl who'd brought me the message. To get to the sleeping quarters, I walk down a narrow, dark-paneled hallway with the familiar smell of sweat and unwashed socks. The door to the dorm is open, and I step in. It looks like a huge barn with a worn hardwood floor studded with row after row of folding cots. Since it's dinner time, all the cots are empty except one. An old man with surprisingly alert eyes lies atop that cot staring at me. Most of the older people who frequent the shelter have rheumy eyes, always moist and often clouded, because they've struggled for so long on the street, and maybe because they have alcohol or drug problems. Come here, boy. His voice is raspy and echoes faintly in the cavernous room. At first, I don't recognize him. True, there are hundreds of homeless on the street every day, but I've been volunteering on Skid Row since I was 14, and after almost 3 years, like I said, I know most of them. I'm thinking that if this guy's a regular, he's passed under my radar. And yet, I have seen him, I think. Not here at the shelter. Walking to my car? Yes. Several times over the past 2 or 3 weekends, I've noticed him. He's caught my eye because every time he stared at me so intently it made me shiver. He'd be pretending to rummage through a dumpster, but his eyes would follow me until I got into my car. I confess his gaze made me uncomfortable, but I let it go. I've learned to shrug off such creepy feelings because so many of the people I meet down here have mental health issues. I steel myself and walk between the rows of empty cots and stop before the stranger with the scary eyes. Unlike most of the people, his clothes aren't especially dirty. And he doesn't smell like someone who's been on the streets for a long time. Wisps of gray hair stick out from his head at haphazard angles, and his face has so many wrinkles I don't think I could count them if I tried. I don't make eye contact, but that's because I never do. Not here, not anywhere. People tell me I'm the definition of shy, and they're right. You asked to see me, sir? I say deferentially, my gaze on his gnarled hands. He rolls over onto his back. I've been watching you, boy. Seen you on the streets a lot. I freeze. So I didn't imagine. Yeah? Yeah. The voice sounds like sandpaper scraping along a fence. Rich boy like you helping out poor folk like me. What gives? I've been asked this question by all of my relatives, so I'm ready with an answer. I think people like me who are lucky to have a lot should help people who don't. And I hope I'm making the world better instead of worse. I mean, the kids I know just party and think about themselves all the time. I don't want to be like that. A crooked smile cracks a wrinkled face. You're the one, all right. The one? With effort, he unclasped his hands with their swollen knuckles and holds his right arm out toward me. It shakes like he barely has enough strength to keep it aloft. Take my hand, boy. Unlike my best friend, JC, who never touches any of the people when he comes to me to the shelters, I usually have no worries about such contact. But I hesitate this time. I mean, this guy has been watching me on the streets. But kindness makes me swallow my anxiety, and I clasp his hand. He squeezes gently. Look into my eyes. Ordinarily, I just glance into his eyes and look away, but that commanding tone compels me. I raise my eyes and focus on his. They're brown and alert, and they shimmer beneath the overhead lights. We lock gazes. I stiffen. Something I can't quite pin down swells within me like a surge of emotion. I suddenly feel different. All the tension drains from his face in an instant. Relaxed, he releases my hand, pulling his arm back with great deliberation. He rests both hands across his stomach and gazes up at me with obvious gratitude. Thank you, boy. Now I can die. I shudder. What do you mean? The man offers a gentle smile. I gave you a great gift, boy. Or maybe a curse. Had it so long I can't be sure no more. But I couldn't die till I passed it on. I stand frozen in place, my heart thumping, my breathing on hold. A gift? A curse? Pass on what, sir? He chuckles. That's a wheezy sound, like he doesn't have much air in his lungs. Just you calling an old bum like me, sir, proves you be the one. I feel different inside, and his words scare me because I know he's done something to me. I'm just a regular kid, sir, nothing special. A chuckle erupts again, wheezier this time. You're more than just a regular kid. Like you said, most kids only care about stupid crap like partying. You'll use my gift well. He lapses into a coughing fit that scares me even more. You want me to get some help? He waves the idea away with one hand. After a few moments, the hacking ceases. No need. It's my time. He suddenly looks really pasty and gray in the face. When you find someone worthy, boy, pass on the gift to them, he whispers, his voice very soft and almost inaudible. He closes his eyes and lies still. Until then, make wise choices. Then he stops breathing. Literally just stops. 1 second his chest is rising and falling, and the next, there's nothing. I want to shake him back to life and ask 1,000 questions. But instead, I run from the room to get help. So that's the opening. That's the beginning of Leo's journey. And he soon discovers that this power that he has been given enables him, when he looks someone directly in the eye, to know exactly when they will die. Not where, and not necessarily by whose hand, but when. And then the reason the story becomes a who will do it is because he accidentally looks into his best friend JC's eyes, and he sees that his friend will be murdered within 2 weeks. And all he has are a few clues in his vision. A jacket with a snake on the back, which is why I have that on the cover, that snake design, and the fact that he is going to be stabbed. So Leo and JC and a new girl at school named Laura, who befriends them, they go on this mad search to try to figure out who the killer is before the event can happen. And of course, they get things wrong and stuff happens. I think it's a fun story. It's a good summer read. It has, as some teenage reviewers have said, it's got some good lessons in it about not judging a book by its cover and about bullying and how to look at people in a fair way. Don't look at the person who has money as being better than the person who is homeless or poor or who is a janitor or who is a CEO. We all have value in who we are as human beings. So that's part of it. That's what that book is about. It is 99 cents on all platforms, Amazon, everywhere, Barnes and Noble, you name it. There is also an audiobook version of it read by a young man named Steven Sanders, who was an anime actor and book reader. I think he did a really good job. And of course, it's in paperback. So please check it out, and I hope you enjoy it. And I do want to talk about another book that I have here, which is Children of the Night. And I want to mention this one because it is free. It is a free book, except on Amazon. The ebook is free everywhere, except Amazon, which has it at 99 cents. So Amazon, you can try to get them to price match. They might do it if you let them know that you would like this book, and it's free at Barnes & Noble and other places. This series, The Lance Chronicles, really reflects quite in detail my years of work with marginalized kids. Those kids I talked about at the beginning, the incarcerated kids, the kids that were in gangs. Almost every character in here is kids of color. There's a few Caucasian kids, of course. We're talking about LA. It's a very cosmopolitan city. But the problem is in LA, there are hundreds of kids on the street every day, just like there are 40,000 kids in foster care. I mean, it's a huge city, and it's in many ways like other big cities. It's a very uncaring city. Now, I wanted, as I mentioned, this book, my goal is to humanize these kinds of children. So I'm going to read just a tiny bit of it. There's an interview that's going on between the King Arthur character. The premise is that King Arthur has returned not to Britain, but to America, Britain's child, because America needs a lot of help, and we do. And especially the children. He's recruiting all of these cast-off children, these kids in the street, and using them to create a new round table in order to shake up the politicians, to shake up the bureaucrats, to get more real rights for children. They have none right now. They are at the mercy of whatever adults decide is best for them, and it's not always best for them. So this interview was with Arthur and Lance, the 14-year-old main character. And I'm really just going to read a little bit of what they're saying here, because it sort of reflects, I'm going to skip a couple parts of the interview. It reflects a little bit of Arthur's philosophy and then what Lance has to say. So there's a situation where Arthur helped these kids. There were some boys on the street who had nowhere to go and were unfortunately having to sell themselves to people for money. And it happens. It happened. I knew a lot of kids like that in juvenile hall. And so, the lady, the interviewer said, well, the police are saying that they were breaking the law. And Arthur says, well, they have no choice. They have nowhere to go. They have no home. And he says to her that children are a gift, Lady Helen, and the hope of this world. Your country professes that all people are created equal. Yet those words only apply to adults, not to the children who have no rights under your constitution. These cast-off youth whom your authorities seek not to aid have become my new round table, dedicated to the cause of justice and the use of might for right. From our earlier discussion, King Arthur, you explained that many of these children you've recruited have been or are currently in gangs and have been actively defiant of the law. How do you plan to change their behavior? By example, Lady Helen. Arthur replied with confidence, and by giving them a purpose in life that befits their humanity. Measure my success not on what these youth have done in the past, but on what they do now and in the future. As planned ahead of time, Helen now turned to Lance and shoved the microphone under his chin as the camera focused squarely on him. Any final words, Sir Lance? Lance looked at her soberly. Yeah, I do got something to say. I grew up with no family. When I was a baby, my mom sold me for drugs. I don't even got a real last name. DCFS put me in foster home, where I got locked in closets and beat up and abused and worse stuff too. He paused to compose himself and then gazed back into the camera, eyes shimmering beneath the lights. I had nothing growing up, except my skating, and I kill on a board. I'm going to the X Games one day, and I'm going to win a gold medal. So mark that, all you people watching out there. Helen gave a laugh of support. Arthur, he's been everything to me. He took me in. He saved me. And he's been saving all these other kids too. You grown-ups out there who say you care about us kids out here, you're lying. Because if you did care, we wouldn't be out here in the streets in the first place. Arthur cares. And he's doing something about it. We're doing something about it. You all like to pretend we're adults when we get in trouble out here. And then you throw us in prison. Well, if we're so adult, how come we can't vote or drive a car? I'm 14 years old. I can go to prison, but I can't drive a car. He paused a moment to let that sink in, pinning those piercing green eyes right to the camera lens. This round table we got going, we're going to show you all that we can be something in this world, that we're important, that we can be better than all the adults who've been hating on us. Arthur, he glanced at the king and grinned. Well, he's the once and future king. And us kids like me, we're his future. The onlookers watching the interview burst into spontaneous applause. Lance beamed broadly, his face positively radiant under the camera lights. Well, I can't top that, Sir Lance. This is Helen Schaefer with King Arthur and Sir Lance for Channel 7 News. The cameras ceased, their red lights going dark. Helen gushed over Lance, as did all the other adults, praising his poise and his impassioned speech, clapping him on the back. Thank you, Arthur, Helen said excitedly. You were great. I've got to get back to the station so we can get this on air. She turned to leave and then hurried back. On a personal level, I think what you're doing is awesome. And anytime you need some coverage, just call me. She slipped a business card into Arthur's hand. He gazed at it questioningly, and a laughing glance took it from him. I'll handle that, Lady Helen, he told her with a sly smile. Arthur don't got the hang of cell phones yet. Helen smiled and hurried to her van. Arthur gazed at Lance, his eyes brimming with pride. Thou art truly my greatest treasure, Lance. That's basically gives you a sense of what it's about, who Lance is. And I think for those of you who are in the UK and grew up on Arthurian stories, this is basically a sequel to The Once and Future King, this series, but set in America. And I think you might find it interesting, the take that I have on King Arthur. And I think definitely anyone who reads it, if you have not had personal experience with the juvenile justice system, with children's court, with even with education, from the inside, you're going to really, it'll be eye-opening. You'll see some things learn things that you never knew before. So I don't know, there may be some questions here. I'm not quite sure how to scroll for them because I'm not on at the moment. I don't know quite how to do it. But anyway, I apologize if I'm not answering your question because I don't see them on the screen. I only have maybe 40 seconds left. If somebody puts in a question, now I can do it. Oh, there it is. The most difficult question for writing is really just, I always want to know that, I want to know how a story is going to end. I don't ever start a book if I don't know how it's going to end, because I think it's important to build to it. Like I knew how this series is a 5-book series. I knew how it would end, the 5th book, before I finished the first one. Because the hardest part is just sort of making sure everything works and I don't leave any loose ends. That's really, really important to me. And thank you, Rachel, for your comment, your compliment. And now I'm going to be turning it over to Rachel because Rachel is the next one. Rachel Churcher is going to be taking over for the feed for the rest of the event. And I'm very grateful and thankful for being here. And thank you for all who tuned in. And goodbye. Take care.